Yeah.
Great.
Well, DJ, would you mind just giving us a shout? Remind us what PowerLunch is all about. I wouldn't want to do this without you, man. And would love for you to pray for us today.
Well, thanks, Jonas, and everyone else that continually puts this together. I've missed a couple in the last 4 or 5 months, but I appreciate you and Sue Ann and everyone that helps put this together. If this is your first time with PowerLunch or you've been involved with it for a little while, always the goal with it is to stay connected, to meet new people, to encourage each other, to just stop in the middle of our month and pray for our neighborhoods and our communities and our workplaces. So I'll kick us off doing that, and then we can hop in so we can make the most of our time and our guest. So here we go. Lord, thanks for all the ways you provide for us. It's been a weird 6 months, Lord, and at times we don't know, I don't think, what to do or say in some situations. So I pray for unity in our areas. I mean, whether it's our house, our neighborhoods, our schools, our the political world is just such a tough arena right now, Lord. So I pray for as much unity as possible. I pray that all of us that are followers of you can remember that this is never about us being in control, and that you're always in control. And we are so thankful and grateful for that, and that we don't need to live in fear because of that. I pray for really, though, our workplaces in the Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, and all the surrounding communities, and that all of us that are in those, and show us how to be your light, especially with times like this, in the middle of this pandemic, in the middle of the social unrest, in the middle of all this voting, political stuff, that people can see Christ in us and through us, and pray for encouragement, and that we are surrounded by the people we need to be to keep us encouraged and focused on you through this time. So thanks for all you've done for us, Lord, and all you will do. And I pray for everyone here, and then everyone that can't be here with our PowerLunch community, that you can just be as loving as possible through this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, DJ. Love you, man. I'm glad you're on the team. And like I said earlier, I wouldn't want to do this without my friend DJ. He's been a real encouragement to this and spurred us on, and so many of you as well who are here. It's great to see you guys. Thank you. I just chatted out, but reminding you, please take advantage of that chat there. It's a great feature for us. And then at the end, we'll just do some open mic sharing time, because I think one of the things I miss most about the PowerLunch being together is just being able to walk around and say hi to so many people. And so this is a substitute. It works. Not my favorite. Look forward to when we can do meals together. And the governor is live right now with some sort of update. So we'll find out after this meeting how we're doing, but the numbers just haven't been good. And so if we're going to trend that direction, I'm committed to doing what I can to give us a healthy alternative here. So thanks for joining us. My guest today is Deb. I know you as Deb. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's what I go by, yes.
Yeah.
People that knew me as a child call me Debbie. So I know when they call me Debbie, then it's going way back in time. So yes.
Yeah. Well, you're my friend Deb. And I first met Deb through shared efforts and support of the New Life Center, and have spent some time with her on the board and in service together. And just, I've grown to love Deb, and I've grown to love the work that she's doing. In fact, it was really delightful when one of my colleagues here at the church said, "Hey, do you know about this Red River Memory Cafe work that's happening?" And I said, let me read about it. And then I find out it's my friend Deb. And so in the information I sent you guys about her bio, she's not just an experienced healthcare worker. She's the co-founder with her friend Beth of the Memory Cafe, and has worked around the region for quite a long time, and just brought a lot of value to our community. So it's fun for me to have her come. One of the other things I love about you, Deb, and that I wanted you to come to this environment, was we have a lot of entrepreneurial, if not entrepreneurs, entrepreneurially minded people that come to PowerLunch. You know, people that like, let's go start something, let's go do something, make a difference. and you strike me as a kindred spirit there.
That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's start there. Like, tell us a little bit about you career-wise, because I think I was doing a little web research and figured out you've worked a few different places, but now you've started your own business. What's that journey? Tell us about your journey.
Well, I've been a nurse for about 34 years, Jonas. And first of all, let me say hello to everybody in the audience and thank you for joining us today. DJ, you're going to be joining us at Memory Cafe. How fun to see you and meet you face to face. Well, DJ is actually one of our presenters at Memory Cafe coming up on the 20th of October. And I see some of our volunteers, Carrie and Karen and Jerry Bueller are also in the audience. So just let me give a shout out to them as well and other people that I may or may not know. It's really nice to be here today. And Jonas, thank you for the invitation, of course.
Absolutely.
So I've been a nurse for about 34 years. I spent most of my time working in the Merit Care system or at Sanford healthcare system. I worked in the psychiatry unit. I worked in the TCU, worked in various med-surg units. A number of years ago, I switched and became a nurse with Hospice of the Red River Valley. And I worked in that role, various roles within Hospice of the Red River Valley for about 15 years. And about 10 years ago, I quit that job in order to begin caring for my parents who were living in Bismarck at the time. We knew that my dad was starting to develop signs of some type of dementia. We weren't quite sure what. And I just wanted to be able to spend time with them. And as the Lord would have it, my husband took a job in Bismarck, and it required him to go back and forth to Bismarck once a week. So we found a little apartment, we called it our Avenue D Lake Home, and we started going to Bismarck once a week for about 8 years. So it was a really fantastic time for me to really spend with my parents. During that time, we also realized that my mother was also starting to develop signs of dementia. So during that time, I learned what it's like to not just be a professional dealing with people who are living with dementia, but a daughter. And man, oh man, I learned so much that I did not appreciate as I was working as a nurse. And one of the things that I just really learned was how easy it is for even the most well-intentioned, kind, caring people, like I like to think of myself as being, to put people who are living with dementia into these boxes and to make these stereotypical assumptions and judgments about them that really have no basis in truth or the reality that they are living with. And one of the primary ways that this came to my mind, or one of the examples that comes to mind just right away with me was the idea that people really didn't have feelings. And that sounds like that's just a basic human rights experience. People who are even remotely kind would think of people, well, of course they have feelings. But really, when I think back to my work as a nurse, and I would tell caregivers, it's really important for you to take care of yourself. Your loved one will not really know what's going on anyway if they were living with dementia. And if they do know, they'll soon forget. Yeah. And I was making these judgments about these human beings that was not true at all. I mean, and how would I think that someone with dementia doesn't have feelings that are just as valid and just as real as my own? And so it took me some time to really come to terms with how I really honestly looked at people who are living with the disease of dementia, and to realize that I am absolutely one of the well-intentioned caregivers who really didn't understand or give people just even the basic credit for having feelings. And it goes deeper than that, and that's manifested in a lot of other ways. And I've got several examples of how I lived that out before I really came to terms with what I was doing. But that really got me thinking about what I could do to improve the quality of life for people living with dementia, how we can really start to really be honest with ourselves as family members or caregivers or medical providers, on how we really do look at people who are living with dementia, because it's a diagnosis, I believe, that's unlike any other in terms of the stigma that's attached to it.
Yeah, help me, Deb, a little bit. I'm a couple degrees removed. So as as an under shepherd, a pastor at a church, I know people uh, who have memory loss, and I know families who are caring for them. I have relatives a couple degrees. What are some of the what are some of those stigmas or fears that you've seen, and or how broad is this an issue? You know what I mean? Because I think if I'm not real close to it, I might not realize how significant it is, or and by significant I don't mean how severe. I just mean like how is this a common thing? Like what are the
Yeah,
stats telling you? What's the data show?
it's really a very, very common internationally, Jonas. It's just very, very frightening for someone to start coming to terms with the idea that there might be something wrong with how their brain is working. It's just really difficult. We'll push it off and we'll say it's stress. We'll push it off and say I'm tired. We'll say, well, this is normal aging. There are things, you know, that we can dismiss the idea that there's really maybe something medically wrong and physically wrong with how my brain is functioning. And it's very difficult. Some people never come to terms with the idea that there's something wrong with how their brain is working, and they just dismiss it. So it's very, very common for people to just live with this fear, and sometimes to the end of their life, they live with that fear because it's so frightening for them to think about telling somebody what's going on, or letting themselves consider the idea that maybe I am developing dementia. Maybe there is something wrong with how my brain is working. So instead of coming to terms with the idea that maybe I should let people know, maybe that's hiding and pretending things are not the way they are, is the worst thing that people can do, because it isolates you. It makes you fearful of people. It creates this stigma within yourself to say that this is just like my little secret, and I'm not going to let anybody in. So oftentimes well-meaning, well-intentioned family members will do the same thing. They'll say, well, we don't talk about the A word. I've heard people say they don't even want to say Alzheimer's. They'll say the A word because we think it's going to make it worse. Or family members showed up in Memory Cafe a few months ago, and they started to cry when I asked the family. I said, can I ask, you know, who is it here that's living with the memory loss? We'd like to really engage, and we're so happy that you're here, and those kinds of things. And the daughter that I mentioned, that Memory Cafe is for people with memory loss for whatever reason, including Alzheimer's disease. And they just said, we have never used that term in our house. We just don't, we want to protect mom, and we don't want to use that term ever. And so once we started breaking down some of those barriers, it became a lot less intimidating for the family. And it became a lot easier for them to start dialoguing about what can we do to help? How can we slow down the progression? You know, what measures are out there? So yeah, I think that it is very, very common. I think there are a lot of people in our community who are living with this that just are so fearful they just don't want to admit it and you know, tell anybody else about it. And there's a lot of family members that are covering up or denying that there's a problem. And then we also have the medical community who also is so interested in, I want to be careful here, but I've talked to doctors myself who have said, I don't tell people that they're living with memory loss. I don't tell people that they have Alzheimer's disease because I don't think they'd cope with it very well. Or I don't tell them that they have Alzheimer's disease because there's nothing I can do to fix it. And so when I ask them, would you do that? Would you ever consider, you know, not telling one of your patients that they have cancer? You know, would you even consider that? And they say, well, no, of course not. And I say, well, it shouldn't be any different, right? For people with dementia, because it robs a person of their autonomy, of their ability to make decisions and to say, this is how I want to spend my time. This is treatment that I want. You know, this is what I don't want. And so there's just the stigma associated with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias is really something that's a huge problem internationally, not just locally. So we're working hard to do what we can to lessen some of that stigma and the impact of it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you've got my mind spinning now. What am I, if I'm typical and I'm thinking, you know, maybe I do have some memory loss. What am I most afraid of normally? what do you see most people are afraid of?
I think they're
Loss and this kind of thing. Like, what do you find that's really just driving that
I
process?
think it's the fear of losing control, a fear of being isolated from others. And when you listen to the experts, and those are people who are actually living with dementia, they'll say that the ugliest part of living with dementia is a reaction of others. Number one, they'll say, well, you don't look like you have dementia, as if there should be some, we immediately jump to the end stages. When we say, I'm living with dementia, I was just diagnosed with dementia, the people around us typically will jump to, Uncle Charlie, who lived with dementia, died of dementia 20 years ago, and was living in a nursing home, totally nonverbal, in fetal position, those kinds of things. We immediately jump to the end stages of this disease. And we don't do that with other diseases. If someone's diagnosed with asthma or COPD, we don't immediately put them on a ventilator.
Right.
That's absurd. But we do that with people who are living with Alzheimer's disease. People who I've talked to personally will say, as soon as I told our kids, they said, you cannot babysit our grandkids anymore. So from one day to the next, those are cut off. There's assumptions that people with dementia can't drive. Well, there are people without dementia that can't drive safely and shouldn't be driving. But there are people living with dementia who can drive, and safely they can drive. So we make all of these broad assumptions and judgments about people from the earliest stage of diagnosis that is really demeaning, and it robs them of their humanity, and it robs them of the joy of living a life and embracing life in a different way. So it is possible to live well with dementia for a long time, but people need support, and they need to be build a village around them of people who are willing to think outside the box and not rush to those judgments, and really treat people as an individual human being with unique needs and a history and values, sense of humor, things that they can contribute in meaningful ways to the community around them while they're living with dementia.
Hey, I just want to hop in, Jonas, if I can. My mom's been diagnosed we've known she's had it for many, many years, early onset dementia, and she's 72, has had it. It's just gradually gotten worse, but we've been on quite a journey, and all this stuff is, we just talked about, Deb, is to a T, to a point. I mean, it's been quite an eye-opening experience for me to learn how to just put all this together is probably the best way to put it, because all your assumptions are correct. And everyone assumes worse, and at times it can get to worse, which we're seeing it get worse.
Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, I just want to tell you, Deb, this has been great. I'm sorry, you guys, I got to leave a little early. I got to hop on another call, but I really appreciate this. Looking forward to this was fantastic. I wish I could hop on and catch the end of this again, because this is really, really good. But thanks again for your time. Jonas, I'll let you keep asking questions, because this is awesome. So have a good rest of the day, guys.
Thank you, DJ. Nice to meet you.
You too.
And guys, we are recording these now, because I have a number of folks that say I'd love to be able to listen in later, and we'll try to make those recordings more easily available. Yeah, I appreciate DJ sharing from personal experience. Okay, so let's just play this out, because he just gave me a live wire. What would be just a fantastic response when somebody either says, I think I might be dealing with this, or I've just recently been diagnosed, and then, XYZ. What would be a wonderful way to respond to that?
When you read the writings and listen to people who have had that experience, Jonas, and again, they're the experts. They've lived this. They're living it currently. They will say, just somebody that's not going to say things to minimize their disease by saying things, oh, I deal with memory loss too. Oh, I do that too. That's not a problem. That happens to me all the time. I lose my car in the parking lot. They minimize the impact of this, or they suggest that they're living with it as well. And so instead of that, people are saying, spend time with me. Don't ignore me. Don't isolate me. We found that with my parents. It was so painful to see how friends that they had had for decades literally decades, 5, 6 decades, all of a sudden ignored them. They just totally isolated them. And that's very common. Really common. I think there's a perception that, well, number one, if people are so afraid of developing dementia themselves, that it's hard for them to come to terms and to face somebody that they've known for decades who's also living with it, because it's scary to all of us. And people also, you know, people who are diagnosed and say the most helpful, the kindest thing that people did for me was to listen, to hold my hand, to listen, to say things like, I will be here for you. This doesn't change who you are. This doesn't change our friendship. This doesn't mean that anything about the value that you have in my life is changing. It won't, because this disease is a disease. It's not changing who you are at your core. So one of the things, you know, the language that we use really oftentimes impacts our attitude that we have and that we exhibit towards people who are living with dementia. And so when we're using language that say, oh, that person's just fading away, or that person is an empty shell, or they're not there anymore, they're really not there anymore. Those kinds of things are very frightening for people who are early to mid-stage memory loss to hear comments, and they're all over. I go to the Y, hear people talking about, oh, they're just an empty shell, or he doesn't know what's going on anymore, so why visit? Why, you know? And those things, when you consider that there are so many people who are either afraid of living with dementia, that they're developing it, who maybe you have no idea that they're fearful of that, and they hear all of these comments from society and from their medical community and from Facebook to say, you know, there's just an empty shell, or my mom doesn't exist anymore. You know, she used to, this is who she used to be, but she isn't anymore. You know, it's very frightening. Can you imagine, you know, if you were living with this fear yourself, to hear people saying things like that? Of course, we don't want to admit then that there's things going on with how our brain is working, or admit to others that we have those concerns. So I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can say you're still a valuable human being. We all have intrinsic value because we're created in God's image, and that the value of human life extends beyond our intellect or our independence or cognitive strengths or the usefulness we have to society. You know, our value as human beings goes beyond that. We're precious in God's sight because we are created in his image. And that doesn't change until the day we die. So when I hear people, you know, right now it's you know, so common to hear about all the different people who are saying, well, you know, this life matters, that life matters, everyone's life matters, those kinds of things. People who are living with dementia have been saying for years, my life matters.
Yeah.
My life matters too. And I you know, in all of the noise that's going on right now, politically and socially and in every arena of life, I just have to believe that the people out there living with dementia say, well, so does mine. My life matters too. And so as a society, as a church, as an individual, how are we going to respond and make it okay for people to approach us if they've got concerns?
No, thank you so much for sharing that, Deb. I love hearing you share. Tell me a little bit about Memory Cafe, because I think you clearly established, here's why I do it. I believe this stuff. You know, these lives matter too. And because we're created in God's image. Now, you and a friend formed a nonprofit called Memory Cafe.
Right.
What is it? What do you guys do?
Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley. So Memory Cafes that's an international movement that was started a couple of decades ago by a psychologist in Holland that recognized the people he were working with that had one form of dementia or another were very, very lonely. They were frequently isolated by just life in general, and they needed to find companionship in their disease. And so he started the first Memory Cafes. Quickly grew, spread over to England, and in the last 10 years or so, they've come over to the US. So I was asked to speak at a Memory Cafe in Grand Forks, which is the first one in North Dakota. That was 3 years ago, and I'd never heard of Memory Cafes. And so I asked them about them and said, what's the story of this? This is just so great. And found out that anybody can start a Memory Cafe. I talked to the Alzheimer's Association in Fargo here, and I said, why don't we have one of these? They're just great. And she said, well, I don't know, why don't you start one? And so I did. And as the Lord would have it, I ran into Beth Ustanko. I didn't know her before, but she had a very similar experience as what I had with my parents. Her dad had Parkinson's disease and developed a dementia that frequently accompanies Parkinson's disease. And she experienced the same thing. And so we decided we would start Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley and just try to create an environment that was safe for people to come to. It was going to be for both the person with dementia and their family members, but it was not going to be a marketing a tool for housing, senior housing, or for people who are selling this gadget or that gadget. We wanted to be very careful about who we were targeting with our membership. And so we are for people with early to mid-stage memory loss and their loved ones. And we gather, pre-COVID, we were gathering 3 times a month at First Lutheran Church and Dakota Medical Foundation. Now we're meeting over Zoom, and we're so very, very proud of our Zoomers. We have, at our meeting on Tuesday, we had 37 people, 6 new Zoomers. So the idea that people with memory loss can't, or older people can't learn how to Zoom is totally false. We are really proving that to be false. So we are really engaged with the creative arts. I'll show you a couple of ornaments we did. The Catherine Kilborn Center of Creativity used money that the Kilborn Group gave us. And on Tuesday, we painted these Christmas ornaments, and they're gonna fire them for us. So here's the paint palette that we use. So we engage in the creative arts. That's an area of the brain that's frequently spared from the impact of dementia. So we like to focus on creative arts as much as we can. We really provide a lot of education. So we provide a lot of books. This the End of Alzheimer's program is one that we're going to be focusing on. What the Hell Happened to My Brain is a Kate Swaffer book that we refer to very frequently. We have a book called Creating Moments of Joy for people who are later on in the disease process. How does the family cope with some of the realities of repeated questions and things that are difficult for family members, understandably, to deal with. So we provide a lot of really great, top-notch and state-of-the-art, really, education. We also do community service projects. I got some blankets, some fleece back here. We do a community service project every year.
Okay.
And we tie blankets for various nonprofits in the community. And this year, because everybody wants to do this at home on their own, because we're not meeting together, this year we'll do 45 blankets. And we are giving the blankets to the Ronald McDonald House for Charity, the YWCA, Jeremiah program, churches, let's see, which ones am I missing? Golly, there's 5 of them. Jeremiah program, Churches United for the Homeless, Ronald McDonald House, Down Home Nonprofit, and I'm missing one. But anyway, we've got 5 new nonprofits that we're going to be giving these blankets to this year. And the idea is that we are reminding our people that they are still valued, significant members of our community. And that doesn't matter if they can remember what happened last week or details of a conversation that they just had. So we're really engaged with reminding people that they are important to the end of their life. And then we also do a lot of things with movement and exercise, because exercise is really good for our brain. So pre-COVID, we do the 5K of the Fargo Marathon every year. And we encourage our people. We get a really great participation. So, we don't always finish the 5K, but we do it. We're engaging with the community. We're engaging with exercise. We're taking some control over our remaining strengths and abilities. So really, Memory Cafe is focused on the remaining strengths, focusing on those strengths and not what's lost and what we're losing. We can look ahead and say, let's focus on the remaining strengths, because they continue to the end of a person's life.
I love that. How I want to watch our time. I could talk to you all afternoon.
Oh, and I could talk for a long time too.
I want to give people a chance to ask questions. So if you guys have questions for Deb, I would love for you to chat those in. One of the questions I have for you, Deb, you mentioned the COVID switch. So you've been on Zoom, and I just can't imagine the additional efforts that's taking. What are some of the needs that we should be aware of? And please don't be bashful. I'm asking, with the Memory Cafe, that maybe we would either be able to meet individuals here that are part of PowerLunch, or we might know the right people to bring to the table. Obviously, you're a nonprofit. Do you need money? Do you need people? What do you need?
Yes to both. We do need money. Yes, we do. Yeah. COVID has been hard on Memory Cafe. We've lost 4 people. 4 people have died since March at Memory Cafe. As some of our people are really rapidly declining in their disease because of that isolation. They get even more depressed, more lonely, more isolated. They don't have opportunities to use their communication skills to talk and to listen. And that takes a huge impact as well. And so it's been hard, really hard on our members. And what we're trying to do, and Karen and Jerry in the audience are just really instrumental in helping us fulfill this, but we are reaching out. We have everybody divided up into 5 groups. We are contacting them every week personally with a phone call or text message. So we're remaining connected to our people in a very tangible, real way. We are also delivering, because we no longer meet in groups, we are delivering all these products, the Christmas ornaments, the fleece for the blankets. And again, our volunteers are doing all those deliveries around town if they can't pick them up in my house. I do need, we've lost some support from leadership. And so I could use help with connecting with speakers, following up with the speakers. I could use a lot of help in terms of raising funds. One of their board members that helped me do that is no longer able to engage in that right now. So we're busy raising funds through Giving Hearts Day. We're trying to raise a $10,000 match for Giving Hearts Day. If anybody owns a business or knows of any business or corporation that would be willing to contribute to our matching fund, that would be wonderful, or individuals. And then coming up in, let's see, the dates are November 24th to December 14th, the FM Area Foundation has a catalog of caring crowd funding site that they open up. And we have a campaign that's called MCI Redefined. It's called Minimizing COVID Isolation. And because that's what we see, the impact of COVID is just that isolation has been hugely impactful in a negative way on both the caregiver and the care provider and the person who's living the memory loss. So we could really use funds and you can always go to our website, which is www.memorycafe.rv, stands for Red River Valley.org. And we have a donate button on that as well. So funding and help, technical help, helping people learn how to Zoom. We have a few tutors who are doing that and they're doing a great job, but we could use some extra support there as well. Yeah. Thank you for asking, Jonas.
Yeah, well,
real needs.
I love the PowerLunch community. We're a little bit smaller now in the COVID season, but our reach is what it is, and it's been amazing. I've seen churches planted out of here. Like, it was really fun to have a church planter show up one day, and they met somebody, and all of a sudden now that guy is super engaged in his church plant. I'm like, yes, that's awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
And, I found out it was through the Global Leadership Summit and this PowerLunch that a number of my friends, just had some business success, and we cheer that on, and nonprofit as well, because all that we're doing is, I think for so many of us, our heart is to take advantage of the realm of influence God's given us and steward it well, and take advantage of the strengths, that are there, and just maximize that. So yeah, having you here is just so delightful. Does anybody have any questions for Deb that you'd like to ask? Either through chat or you can turn on your unmute. We'll give it a minute or two.
Jonas and Deb, how would you get someone signed up on the Memory Cafe? I have a mother-in-law who is not, she's got the old flip phone, not a smartphone, doesn't have a computer, doesn't have any sort of access to anything like that. What do you have for a suggestion?
Well, is there anybody in her life that could connect? We have, Russ, a program. It's a pilot program that we're putting in place just in the last several weeks, where we're actually purchasing some Amazon Fire tablets for people to loaning them to people, to families. So it's, if there's somebody in their life that can connect them to it, we give them an email. It's all set up. All they need is somebody in the home to be able to click on the link and connect them to us virtually. So if there's, we can provide we just gave two of these. This is, like I said, a pilot program. But we are be happy to use some of our funds to purchase more of those Amazon tablets for people that don't have that. Because people are finding, even I had talked to a 90-year-old a couple of weeks ago that said, "Oh my gosh, Deb, are you kidding? I can use this not just for Zooming with Memory Cafe, but I can use this, I can have coffee with my grandson in North Carolina, throughout the winter." So as we're looking ahead, there's so much fear and there's so much trepidation with influenza, with more COVID, with more isolation, and the impact that is going to have on families. We have a lot of families that can't visit their loved ones because they're in skilled nursing facility. We've had several of those people who died that died alone, and families couldn't spend time with them. So getting that technology into the hands of people who may seem like they're inaccessible in that way, we're really trying to troubleshoot that and say, is there anybody, a neighbor, a family, a grandchild, a pastor, somebody that come twice a month, and connect them to that link that will allow them to engage in really healthy conversation. We have a lot of fun, we laugh, people are amazed. When I talk about Memory Cafe or show people slides, it's not unusual for people to say, "Oh my gosh, you look like you have so much fun." Well, yeah, we do. We have a lot of fun. We're focusing on a quality of life, and that should not change as a disease progresses. So no matter what stage or age of disease anybody with any disease is living in, they deserve to have a quality of life that's meaningful to them and that engages them with other people. And that the more we engage with other people, the more we do some of these activities, the more we think outside the box to say, "Oh, my husband would never want to tie a blanket." Well, let's try and let's just see, because he might. Happened with one of our families, and the gentleman ended up tying 5 blankets by himself. He loved it so much. So we need to be creative. We need to kind of think outside the box. We want to help. Again, as part of how we want to use some of our funds is to connect people to that technology, especially with winter coming on. It's a beautiful way to connect, and it's reaches far beyond the Memory Cafe realm when you consider that grandkids can Zoom with their grandparent, in the middle of a blizzard. So whatever we can do to help with that, we'd be honored to be involved with that. But otherwise, if a phone call from one of our volunteers would be something, a weekly phone call, let us know. Give us the contact information. We'll call and introduce ourselves to them. Okay. We had some driveway parties this year. We had 5 of them in my driveway. And people were just so hungry to see one another. So we got permission from our board to have a driveway party where we were socially distanced. Everybody was wearing masks, no food and cookies allowed. And that was painful for a lot of us. But people were able to see each other, at least half their face we could see. And it meant the world to people. So, as opportunities arise like that, we are eagerly pursuing the face-to-face contact. But until then, we're making good use of Zoom and letting people know that you can handle the technology. We'll practice with you until you get it. We set up practice meetings over Zoom. So it works. And
okay,
warmly welcome you to connect with me, and I'll try to see if I can make that happen for you.
Okay. Yeah, because she had recently gone through shingles, so was completely isolated, and we noticed over that 3 or 4 weeks just such a decline.
Yes.
Such a severe decline because of absolutely no social interaction, and just being able to go and visit, watching her come back out. It was really surprising to see just how much that social component is so important.
We are seeing that dramatically too. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for what you're doing, and we will look forward to getting that contact with you.
Good. And these projects, we're finding people too. I spent about, and this is going to be shocking, about $1,500 at Joanne Fabrics a couple weeks ago, buying this fleece fabric, and we don't have enough. We need to go back and get more of the backing. We bought too much of the print and not enough of the backing, but people are saying they want to do 3 or 4 of them. because it gives them meaningful purpose. And especially when they find out they're going to these nonprofits and children who are being served by the nonprofit at Christmas. And we all need purpose. We all need hope. We all need something that we can do to contribute to the world around us. And so that might be an idea too, is to just give her some fleece and help her tie some blankets, and we'll donate them. And so love to be involved.
Love it. Hey, I want to just pause, Deb, and pray for you, and call kind of a, hey, this will be the end of our official program, but then we can stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to chat. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for this time with my friend Deb, and thanks for her passion and enthusiasm she has for others who are created in your image. God, we praise you for the truth that we've heard, that every life and everything that you have made is valuable because of who you are and because you have given us value. Lord, I pray that you would bless Deb in her work. Please give her favor with those that she comes into contact with. And God, please multiply her efforts. Thanks for her zest for life and her joy in serving. God, thank you for this time we've had together. And I pray for all those who are joining us now and who will watch later. Lord, give us a heart to see what you see and to respond with the tremendous grace that we've received from you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.